So, hi, I'm Ella Vida, and welcome to my podcast. Today, I am joined again by the absolutely amazing Donna Akasha of Love Consciousness. Hi, Donna.
Hi Ella, thank you very much.
As any of our listeners may know, we're always up for a really good chat. So we're really going to dive in today into what Donna has been doing with the evolution of super consciousness and her ASM, her Activate Super Conscious method. So welcome to the program, Donna.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's nice to finally get on again, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We had a little bit of a break for a bit, don't we? So it's so nice to have you back on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure you agree. We have had a few chats, but it's been a bit of a crazy time, hasn't it? Like really
Yeah.
busy, 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 busy. So much happening that you almost feel like you're being pulled away from, that really deep connection. And it's like, oh wow. And then it's like you're back, you land back in, don't you? And
Yes.
that's certainly how it's been for me with everything that's been going on recently.
Yeah. So what has been going on with you recently? Because you moved, haven't you, as well?
Well, I'm having a long break, a long breakaway. I'm in Africa at the moment in Zanzibar,
Amazing.
which is pretty exciting. It happened really quickly. It wasn't like a trip that was, pre-planned over a long period of time. It was kind of over the space of 2, 3 weeks. The decision was made, and then everything just went into, getting prepared in the organization. At the same time, prior to leaving, I was just finishing up the online ASM practitioner training. And so I was super, like, immersed, if you like, in my work, because it was such an intense time getting that training course complete. And
Yeah.
so it was just day in, day out, getting everything done, getting everything prepared, getting everything uploaded to then jump into action to prepare to come to Africa. And I worked so hard prior to coming here. I knew that the first couple of weeks here was just going to be like, just switch off, just
Yeah.
switch off and have a bit of a holiday, which was very much needed. And obviously, because I'm here for, a little bit of a longer period, I'm now kind of like trying to integrate a kind of a bit of a workflow back into the trip. So, yeah.
Excellent. It's so important, isn't it, to take a break? And I know that you work so hard. And I have done your Activate Superconscious method as well. So I can already say from experience how amazing it really is. And it's such a deep, deep dive as well into the realms of quantum, super consciousness. So tell me, how did this all start? And what is the Activate Superconscious method?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was just a bit of a natural progression. Um, I have been doing sort of traditional hypnotherapy for a number of years. I think it's 17 years now.
Oh, wow.
Um, and teaching hypnotherapy for around 8 years. And part of the mainstream hypnotherapy, I began to integrate the quantum hypnotherapy, which was super fascinating. And to begin with, even though, as you know yourself, you don't actually need to really understand even how quantum works really, and even what it
Mm.
is for the method to work and to get those results. And so I guess part of the birth of Activate Superconscious Method was me diving into understanding what is the quantum field? What is this thing called 0 point? What really is superconsciousness? And I feel like there's no coincidence, is there, in life. I feel like everything's synchronized to a certain degree. And it really felt like the last 4 years at least was me going on a deep dive journey of my own personal evolution, if you like, conscious evolution, to understand the mechanisms of who I am, what I am, how this works,
Yeah.
how do we access higher consciousness, how do we embody higher consciousness, And it was my own self-inquiry, really, of diving deep into all of that, that kind of everything began to unfold. And I began to see, a bigger picture that then allowed me to then break that down into a more simplified way that I could hopefully pass that on to individuals. And of course, one of my realizations now is that, entering into Zero Point and accessing higher consciousness, hypnosis is only one way.
Mm.
There are multiple ways to do that. And even though Activate Superconscious Method, if you like, the initial way of doing that is using a hypnotic method, because it's super easy when
Yeah.
you're in, and it's a super easy way to guide other people in. But there are just, sort of what we would call more kind of guided meditative processes that are the quantum space methods. So it's diving into all these different ways of how we activate the higher consciousness that we are, our higher self. And of course, I think we're all beginning to realize that it's more than that now. We're in
Yeah.
an embodiment of the understanding, the understanding, and the realization, the realignment to that what we are. So yeah, it's all one and the same thing, you
So,
know.
so can you explain to us what is quantum space? What are we connecting to?
Okay, so the way that I see it, and I just want to point out at this point, one of the things that I really promote when I am teaching the training and stuff is I'm teaching a method.
Mm.
Okay, I'm not teaching individuals how to see the universe, the consciousness, what is the quantum field, and all of this stuff. And remember that most of the explanations you will hear are based on models of something that we don't really understand fully and completely. But this was my understanding of it. And of course,
Mm.
when you go through the process and you access that space for yourself, you can gain your own insights and understanding. So in other words, I'm not telling you what it is, you
Yeah.
know, I'm just sort of explaining from my discoveries, I guess, what I've discovered. Okay.
So, so how can you explain to someone what this is that they would be doing?
So the way that I see the quantum field, okay,
Mm.
which is the same as the 0 point space, it's a point where we can achieve or access within our own consciousness that is a point of creation that is before time as we
Uh,
know it, before
Okay.
space, before the program. So if you think of everything being a form of creation that expands from this point out and around us in order for us to experience consciousness, and form and creation. And so the 0 point space of the quantum field for me is a space that's like a womb-like space. It's a space where we can sit, and actually, if you just sit there without any intention and without any thoughts and without any attachment, you're just sitting in awareness. It's just pure awareness. However, when you access this space with an intention, for example, then you can gain the clarity or the creation of that intention. And you can ask questions, or you can be guided to ask questions in this space and gain the answers. So my feeling is this is the space of access all areas of our, what I call the Akash, or our collective, records, if you like, that we each hold as soul. That we each hold from all of our different experiences across space and time as soul. And we have these catalogues of information, of data, of gifts, our ancestral lines. All of it can be accessed, if you like, and collected from this point. If you are trying to access the answers to questions, for example, and you are not in that space, it has to go through the layers of creation, of form, of the program, so then the information can be distorted, or you can doubt the information's clarity.
When you say program, just to clarify for our viewers what you mean by program.
Yeah, I mean, programs are what we're subject to. So, I mean, I guess I see the whole of reality as a sort of program. But as we move through our human experience, we buy into, we attach to, this is the way this is what I believe in, this is who I am, this is how the world works,
Yes, our
etc.,
belief
etc.
systems.
Yeah, so but really what it is it's energy patterns that we hold. And so our consciousness streams through these programs, and we believe that these programs are who and what we actually are. However, programs can be changed. They're only programs. The part of us that remains consistent throughout our full experience is the soul,
Mm.
is the essence, is the part of us that we recognize as us, no matter how many times we change our story or our programs or our belief systems. So yeah, the programs are the things that we buy into as part of the human experience.
So, what would you say your experiences with quantum in the way of um, what was your biggest kind of takeaways from quantum and what you've learned from it? Did it change your programming? That explain sort of how it worked for you?
I feel like it just gave me a completely different perception
Mm.
on how it all works. So bearing in mind, I have spent years working with things like the program, NLP, hypnotherapy, where you're identifying like a limiting program, for example, and then you're readjusting the program to be a bit more kind of in alignment with something that serves you,
Mm.
serves your higher purpose. However, there are always limitations when you're working within the program. So an example of that would be I believe I'm not lovable, but I don't really need to reprogram myself to be I am lovable because that's my natural state of being. All I actually really need to do is let go and recognize that the limited programs are not really who I am. And so it's a change in perception. It's a change in realizing that we're not the program,
Mm.
we're consciousness. It's a way of remembering what we are, that we do have access to lots of multidimensional aspects of ourself, if you like. So, for example, when you use Activate Superconscious method, you can specifically ask to channel a particular aspect of yourself, or that might just happen spontaneously, depending on the questions you ask. So I remember you done a session on me and I was channeling an aspect of myself that was identifying herself as from Andromeda.
Mm.
That's an example. Whereas most of the time, actually, when I go into the space, I'm normally accessing the highest level of my consciousness, which actually has access all areas. So you don't need to channel a specific aspect because the highest level of our consciousness has the answers to all of the aspects, if you like. But it's a nice tool for exploration. If you
So,
want to channel a particular aspect, for example.
so what would you say if someone asked you, what does the super consciousness know? If it said it knows all things, what does it know, and how do people tap into that?
How do people tap in? So again, the method, and again, there's more than one ways to tap in to the 0 point space. The method that we use, literally what it's doing is it's closing down the busy analytical mind. It's closing down the body and the program from interfering with the process. And so when you kind of quieten all of this down that we identify as being
Mm.
us and the thoughts and the feelings and everything, you quieten it all down and you first of all move into a space of awareness. So you're pure awareness of the facts. that you're inhabiting a body. If thoughts come in, you can just be aware of those thoughts. But it's from that space where you're not identifying as being these things that you can then direct the consciousness that you are to the purpose of the session. So, we often do it with a guide. So, as you know, a facilitator will guide someone else in. That's the easiest way for beginners
Mm.
because you don't need to try to figure out how to access the space and then navigate the space.
Yeah.
Whereas with more practice, as you know, you can access the space and also there are ways in which you can navigate it. So, for example, I might just have questions written down on a piece of paper and I write questions on the paper so that I don't have to engage my mind too much into, say, thinking of what the questions are. I just literally read the questions off the paper and then speak the answers through me. And they come through, as you know,
Yeah.
really clearly, with such clarity. And it's a really fascinating process because we all go through periods, especially when we are in quite a rapid evolutionary phase, which a lot of people are right now, we can become a bit confused, because we're dismantling a lot of the kind of old, limited aspects of ourselves,
Mm.
which are parts of our consciousness. And as they are kind of crumbling or falling away, it can feel like a little bit of like we're losing parts of ourselves or parts of ourselves are dying. And sometimes these parts really kind of want to cling on for dear life.
Yeah.
And in that, there can be a confusion. So the chitter chatter of these parts coming in, which we hear as thoughts and feelings, we then lose that clarity of trust, of
Mm.
going, well, these answers are here, and I feel intuitively that this is right, but this is saying something different. And
Yeah.
then there's the conflict. Whereas when that's not there, then when the information comes through, there's a deep knowing and a trust that actually what's coming through is the right answer. And then you don't spend all that time in confusion trying to work out what's right and what's wrong. Like, is this actually right? Am I just making this stuff up? And all the things that we do, when we're beginning to tap in.
Yeah, well, we're not analyzing it so much and then questioning it. So it really is about just trusting completely what is coming through. And do you feel that that can take, I suppose it's different for different people, but do you would say that that takes quite a bit of practice to be able to do to kind of get in that space where we do switch off as those thoughts come in, that kind of chitter chatter, so that we can more fully connect into ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is the beauty of why it's good to have a facilitator.
Mm.
So the idea is that the facilitator guides you in, you have the experience, because experiencing is a form of embodiment. We can watch a video like this and we can listen, but we're only intellectually understanding it. We've not embodied anything. We still
Yeah.
don't know whether it works or not. But by experience, that's when we embody. So
Mm.
through having a facilitator guiding you in and you having the experience and you feeling that, wow, where's this coming from? Actually, there's no doubt. When you know something and there's no doubt, you're not doubting it, you're not second guessing it, you're not
Yeah.
questioning it, you're not analyzing it. Then having that experience, and don't get me wrong, sure, the first time you have something, an experience like this, if you've never experienced it, of course the mind is going to want to go, what is?
Intervene.
But after a few times, and again, you find it much easier to fall into trust.
Mm.
You just enjoy the experience of that clarity and having multiple, questions that you've maybe had for a long time cleared up for you.
Mm.
That's where the trust comes. And then from that point, you can then to begin to explore it for yourself because you then know the difference between when it's coming through clearly and when your programming is interfering with the process.
Yeah. So would you call that embodiment? That's somebody fully embodying that process?
It's embodiment when you begin to, when you've experienced it. And don't get me wrong, embodiment is a process in itself, you know. So for example, I was speaking about this just this morning, that the idea that reality isn't really out there, you know, that's an illusion. It's actually just data that we are taking in and we are projecting out to have an interactive experience of reality. Now, I've known this up here for a long, long time, and I've had some experiences of the realization of that, but I still go into forgetfulness of that fact
Mm.
day to day as I'm moving through my day because I've not fully and completely embodied that yet. But I know that I'm in a process of deeper embodiment of that, you
So
know.
would you say that we, so some people, I know for some listeners, a head might have exploded at that point and gone, what do you mean that this external reality is not reality? So what is it in that case? And are we creating our own reality?
There's lots of different things to consider, I feel, when we're looking at reality creation. So obviously there is a construct of data that is the earth, you know, that we are inhabiting, and we're taking in that. So for example, if we're both walking down the street and we look at a plant, we can both see that plant, you know, because the data is there to say that there is a plant there.
Mm.
However, how we perceive that plant, that might be different, you know, because actually we are two individualized technologies, you know, avatars, human beings. And when we pull the data in, that is the plant, for example, we pull the data in, we then project our own creation of that data for us to interact with it. And there's no way of you knowing or me knowing whether they're the same,
Yeah.
you know. And that's just a really simple example. Obviously, when we're talking about human interactions, that's when it
Mm.
gets really complex
Mm.
because that's where a lot of our limiting beliefs come in and everything. Well, I'm not good enough, for example, is a huge thing on so many levels. And if you don't believe you're good enough, your reality distorts. So you
Mm.
take in the information, you take in the data, the reality distorts and projects out to show you what you believe to be true. I'm
Yeah.
good enough in this case. So it's not just straightforward. You know,
Yeah.
it is that we are taking in data, we are then translating that data in our own design, and we are then projecting that data back out so that we can interact with it and have the experience. So
And
yeah,
sorry, as we interact with this experience that we're having, talk to me a little bit about agreements that we might set up, energetic agreements with or without knowing about them.
yeah. So again, this is something that I'm still embodying. It's something that I'm still trying to understand, and it's something that I'm still playing with. And it came to my attention, you know, I don't know, maybe a few years ago when I was really looking at what it meant to be sovereign, to be a sovereign being, and to be a divine sovereign being. So we're not just talking about human sovereignty here, we're talking about being a divine sovereign being and
And what
what
does that
are
mean? What is a divine sovereign
well, you
being?
know, again, I'm still you know, coming to my own understanding, but you know, it's the way that it really was introduced to me was about understanding that there are divine laws, there are universal laws, and each sovereign being, in their own right, has a right to live by these laws. But the thing is, we do not understand what the laws are. Because really, what it comes down to in the most basic form is that what we're talking about is we're talking about that we are each individually here as creators. So it's going back to we're creating our own reality. Now, being creators, we don't understand the laws of creation. If we don't understand that we're creators and we don't understand the laws
Mm.
of creation, then how can we understand what being a divine sovereign being is?
Mm.
Because it's all one and the same thing. It's about understanding the laws of creation. So as a creator, there are certain laws that that if I understand and I can embody these laws, I can have more mastery over what I create, for example. And so going back to what you said about agreement, there was two things that I learned that were really probably the most important things that any of us could learn. Number one is intention, and the other one is agreement. So my understanding is that absolutely every single thing that we experience in our reality, we experience it because at some point in space or time, we have agreed to that. And so that could be that we consciously agreed. I agreed today to have this podcast and this chat to you. Or it might well be that I am unconsciously agreeing to something. You know, I might unconsciously, I don't know, tick the box on the Facebook terms and conditions when I've not actually read the contract. You know, so I don't really know what I'm agreeing to, you know, and therefore I don't know what's actually coming into my reality creation through Facebook because I might have agreed to all kinds of stuff in that agreement. Does that make sense?
So how would we, first of all, well, it was two questions really. First of all, how would it come to light with what we've agreed to? So if there's certain things that we've agreed to that we're unaware of, and when we step into a quantum space, we can sometimes guide clients to come to the realization of the certain things that they have agreed to that they may be unaware of. So how does that come to light? And the other question was about the laws. How do we know what those laws of creation are? How can we begin to understand what those laws are?
So again, the first thing for me was reversing the inversion, I call it. So the first thing that you really have to, even if you've not fully embodied it, but at least understand is that reality is not happening to you. Reality is happening through you.
Mm,
You know, so if you can't even get your head around that, there's no point even going into any other aspect of it. You don't need to have embodied it, but at least begin to explore the possibility of actually that makes much more sense. That reality is actually being generated through me. It's not coming at me. And then acknowledging that you are co-creating
mm,
reality, because your interaction with reality is what pulls reality into your field of creation, and you create more of it. Your agreement to what you say is allowed to come into your field, or what you believe is reality or what you believe is true pulls into your field of creation, and you create from that. What you consume every day, or what energy are you interacting with every day?
mm.
Are you having conversations with people and nodding your head in agreement when you actually don't agree with them? You know, it's so deep, it's so vast.
Yeah,
It's not an overnight realization. It's like a science. It's a creational science that we've yet to not even learn, because I think we innately know it. We've yet to fully remember,
yeah.
you know, how it works. But quantum entanglement is like cords from our consciousness, from our fields of energy that are plugged in to the things that we agree with.
So can you
And
give me an
so,
example of that?
okay, oh, I could start with a really basic example. So I could start with perhaps just what's happening in the world. You
Mm,
know, we look out into the world and the world looks very chaotic, okay? And, you know, I don't want to give my opinion about what I feel is happening in the world, but let's just say there's a system that I don't feel is working for me or
mm,
humanity as a whole. Now, most of the systems on the planet, the reason why they're in place is because we all agree to them being there. And it
Mm,
is actually that simple. And we think it's a solid reality. We're not in a solid reality, it's an energetic reality.
mm.
So let's say that there's a government system that I do not agree with. Okay. Now, if I agree to that on any level, I am plugged into that, quantumly entangled to that. And so part of my consciousness is still helping keep that in creation. And it doesn't matter whether I agree to it, like I agree with them, or whether I'm outraged and I'm trying to fight them. The fact that I am still interacting with that as though it's something I want to be connected to means that I
Yeah,
am still co-creating that structure.
yeah,
Okay, does that makes sense. And so
yeah,
this is,
yeah.
I feel like this is why it's so important for us to begin to understand the way that we co-create,
Mm.
particularly the planet. Because if we can understand that actually all we have to do is withdraw consent, then we are no longer feeding that system energetically anymore.
And when you say about co-creating, I mean, when we talk about energetically, you're co-creating with what we perceive to be reality,
Mhm.
or the system, the program that we're living in, that we're involved with, that we're attached to. But would you also say that the co-creating is with other people as well? So they're not like a figment of our imagination, for
Oh, no,
example. We're
no,
like
no.
one consciousness together, that if we're all then believing in, for example, a government system, then we're all plugged into that and we're all seeing our perception. Obviously, it's not all the same, but our perception of that government and how we perceive that and through our own belief system.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we think about the government in a sense of like, let's just, because I'm in Africa, so this
Mm.
is bringing a
Yeah.
lot of stuff into my awareness about perception and about different cultures and about
Mm.
human beings on the same planet living completely different experiences, you know. So let's say the British government, because we're in the UK, and again,
Mm.
this is just using the government as an example. That government, to certain people on this planet, isn't even in their reality.
Yeah.
Not even in the reality.
Yeah.
They might be living a peaceful life out on a farm, and it's just not even part of their world.
Yeah.
Okay. And so again, of course, really what counts with the British government is the people of Britain. And when we understand it's an energetic reality, the
Mm.
more people that withdraw and say, I don't want that as part of my reality anymore. And I'm going to go into, remind me to go into something that makes it more complex in a minute. I don't want to be part of that anymore. I'm withdrawing. I'm withdrawing my
Mm.
consent. It's not part of my reality creation anymore. I no longer feed that. And like you said, because we're part of a collective consciousness, the more people that do that, what happens is when a certain percentage of individuals unplug, withdraw, it has a ripple effect
Mm.
over the rest of the consciousness because really we are one consciousness.
Yeah.
Now, me giving an example of unplugging from the government is a tricky example to give
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's not quite so easy to just unplug from the government, is it?
Yeah.
It's not easy. You can't, most people in Britain can't just say, I unplug, I disagree, I'm no longer feed into that creation because it's weaved throughout the whole of society
Mm.
in all its different forms, and people rely on it
Yeah.
in all its different forms. And so therefore, this is where it's a really difficult thing actually to actually withdraw all agreement, if you like, to
Yeah.
the government, for an example. So maybe it is a good example because it's not black and white. And this is where, when you're consciously evolving and you're being asked to take on more and more responsibility for your creation,
Yeah.
that's where it gets challenging.
Mm.
Because if you're completely weaved into the system, sometimes we have to unplug those parts of our consciousness from different aspects of the system.
Mm.
Let's say you live in a big 7-bedroomed house and you have a job and you have a car on finance and your kids are in private school. And, I could go on and on and on, and you feel completely stuck. Because if you walk away from the job you hate, you lose everything.
Yeah.
Your family loses everything. And that is a massive, scary thing
Mm.
for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so it's, you're kind of nomads, if you like. The individuals that have already, dropped out of society,
Mm.
they're going to find it much easier
Yeah.
embody, the deeper layers of how we create, because they don't have the attachment to these things. So they don't have the things to lose. And so they won't have to go through the pain of letting go of so
Yeah.
much. Does
And
that
also
make
the
sense?
kind of persecution, I suppose, that comes with that as well, of people around when people start to take themselves away from that, as well as being like irresponsible or what are you doing? When people start to, for example, like pull out of certain jobs, go and fulfill their dreams and try and live a different life, how that can, I mean, sometimes it depends again on that person's perception. Sometimes it can be frowned upon. Sometimes it can be the opposite. Sometimes it can be people cheering on and going, yeah, go and live off grid, go and have this amazing life, go and travel, go and be free. Um, and I suppose it depends how plugged into the system you are or what your belief system is.
Absolutely. And just because you step out of the system, and we could use the spiritual community as an
Mm.
example, it doesn't mean that you suddenly have all the answers.
Yeah.
That's only just one aspect of, the self-realization, the remembering
Mm.
of what you are, you know.
Yeah.
And there's lots and lots of people that, maybe live more simplistic lives and they eat healthy food and they feel like they're doing all the right things, but they may not still have actually really began the real process
Yeah.
of the real integration and embodiment of their soul. Because when you begin to go through, as the real embodiment of your soul, you have to let go of a lot of the inverted consciousness, the bywave consciousness.
Mm. And
That's
the
all of it.
ego as well. I
That's
mean,
all
if you're
it is.
looking at things that
Yeah,
you're creating, you'd be like, well, I wouldn't create that. I don't want that in my experience. So why on earth would I create that? It's kind of dropping that, isn't it? And also dropping any blame or shame around that of it all being your fault either. So there's so many aspects to just that in
oh,
itself.
absolutely. And we often have to be willing to look at ourselves,
Mm.
um, and let go of things that are difficult to move through.
Mm. Yeah.
And so it takes a bit of courage sometimes to really begin to dive in deep as well. And you start slowly, don't you? And then you
Yeah.
sort of go and get in the feel of this now, and then you can begin to let go of the deeper layers. Um, but it's all part and parcel with the journey. But I do feel like we're in a space, I just wanted to add,
Mm.
and in a time where we have the energetic support like never before.
Yeah.
So the releasing and the letting go and everything else doesn't have to be as challenging as maybe it once was.
Yeah.
You still have to be a willing participant. We still have to make the decision that we're ready to let go of something. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, so it's not black and white, and it's very complex. And like I say, I am not sitting here saying that I understand it. Um, I'm still in the process of diving deeper and deeper into it, playing with reality, playing with my quantum spaces.
Mm.
So setting up my quantum spaces and then moving out into the world. And Africa's an amazing place to do this because it's so raw here and it's so different. And as a white woman walking down the street, you get bombarded,
Mm.
you know, every, 20 yards, someone else is approaching you, trying to sell you something, trying to
Yeah.
offer you something, because of course it's a very poor country,
Yeah.
and they see the individuals that are white as people with money,
Yeah.
and so that's a source of income for them. That's
Yeah.
because of them feeding their families and things like that. But it becomes very intrusive. So, you just want to walk down
Yeah.
the street, or you just want to walk down and appreciate the absolute beauty of like the beach, for example. And as you sort of say no thank you to one, you've got the next one and the next one and the next one. Now, we're talking about agreement, for example. So what I've been experimenting with is if I open up my quantum space and I program that I do not give consent to anyone coming into my space, therefore avoiding this constant bombardment of
Mm.
individuals coming in.
Because you're
Um,
creating your own reality, right? So if you
exactly,
can,
and
yeah,
infringing my space
yeah,
and my peace.
yeah,
And actually, what's happening is I'm creating the space and I'm walking down and I'm like, wow, no one's bothering me today.
yeah,
It's interesting. And like I say, I still don't fully understand it, but the quantum spaces are fascinating and they're really fascinating to work with. And if anyone hasn't just looked at what a quantum space is, or experimented in any way with quantum spaces, I really recommend it, because that was actually the start of a massive jump for me in my understanding of reality creation. Because the more you use them, the more you understand, when it doesn't work for you, you have to identify why it's not working, for
yes.
example, and you do, and then you have a realization and you adjust it and you try it again and you're like, right, it's working for me now, for example. So yeah.
And I love the fact that you're getting to use these spaces out in Africa, whereas I know that we said the other day when you first created that quantum space and suddenly nobody bothered you anymore, it because everything it's such a culture shock when you're out there that everything's so in your face that if you were to if you were to create that quantum space in England, for example, where you're used to being in everyday life, in your home, and it's not so easy to see, but out somewhere like that, it's much easier to see because it's a space that you're not used to being in. And so it's very much kind of like it's so intense and it's kind of in your face, or suddenly it's not in your face, so
Yeah,
you can
everything's
really tell.
intensified for sure. So it's
Mm,
dead easy. It's really, really easy to see the breakdown of what you're pulling in, you
yeah,
know, and what you're not.
yeah,
So it is a great playground for reality creation and experimenting and deeper embodiment and deeper understanding of that. So that's one of the things that I'm really feel like I'm taking from my experience here already, and that will continue, I'm sure, because as I said, I'm still trying to understand all of this, or find
mm,
deeper embodiment within it. So in other words, you think you understand something and then you have a realization and you're like, whoa, there's even more to it. And this
yeah.
is ongoing, it's an ongoing thing. It's not a destination.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you were saying something before the other day about your experience in Africa and being aware when we've talked about programming, we've talked about kind of governmental systems and programming, we've talked about kind of spiritual aspects and religion and programming. So tell me a little bit more about what your experience is with kind of cultural programming, if you like, and the awareness of that, especially now that you're in a different country.
I mean, absolutely. So I would say to begin with, and I've shared this with a few individuals, I've never been in a third world country before.
Mm,
Okay. And when I landed, and we had to move, you know, from the airport to where we were staying. So an hour and a half's journey, if you like, and having that first experience of driving through the streets
Yeah.
of Africa. And it just looks like, you know, complete chaos
Mm.
compared to how everything's so structured, you know, back in the UK, if you like.
Mm.
So, you know, dirt roads, mud houses, you know, busy, 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 you know, and just the shock. So
Mm.
initially for me, it was like, it was a feeling of, am I safe?
Mm.
So straight away, triggering up some of my deepest safety mechanisms. Like I
Yeah.
was in a taxi, and I still didn't even feel safe. But my thought of like walking down the street, I just thought I honestly, but even though it was just like, you know, very, very short lived, I thought I've made a mistake. Like, what am I doing here? I can't do this. You know, that was my
Yeah.
initial. But then, of course, it's interesting because then, of course, you have to look at that, don't you? What is this?
Mm.
Where's this coming from?
Yeah.
Am I safe or am I unsafe? And so then you've got to discern between what is the cultural programming
Mm.
and actually just the fact that you are outside of your comfort zone and having
Mm.
a brand new experience that you've never experienced before. Therefore, of course, it creates this hyper awareness, like because your system that's designed to protect you is on
Yeah.
hyper alert, trying to work out if you're safe or not.
Yeah, because you're looking for, I suppose your mind's looking for familiarity. And when you're going somewhere that's so different. Oh, sorry, I think you've frozen. I think we've frozen just briefly. I've got you back.
Uh, yeah, so yeah, that was the initial, you know, the
Mm.
initial shock and the fear and my fight or flight system being really dysregulated. And then of course I had to step out. So it was the next
Mm.
step of stepping out and can I walk down the street and, you know, interact and be part of this. And, you know, obviously cultures are different. So for example, something that I noticed immediately being here, um, Africans, and particularly African men for some reason, they're not afraid to stare, you know, so people
Yeah.
stare at you. So it's like spotlights on you as well, which
Yeah.
makes you feel even more uneasy when you're in
Yeah.
a space where you're kind of like, I'm not sure whether I'm safe. Oh my God, everyone's staring at me. I feel so out
Yeah.
of place. Um, and so it was like these baby steps of
Mm.
moving just through the nervous system,
Mm.
freaking out, you know. To then, it was funny because I kept being reminded to embody the courage of the lion. And about 3 days in, I moved into a place, and in my bedroom, on one wall, I mean, the whole wall was a massive painting of a lion. And
Oh,
so
wow.
every day and night that I was there, I was just staring at this huge lion and just kept reminding myself, like, you're brave, you're
Oh,
strong, you know,
bless
you've
you.
got that courage inside of you. Just do it. Push yourself, you know,
Mm.
push yourself that little bit further. Um, and then what's really unfolded, and I feel that like this is a massive part of my journey right now in my own embodiment process is what I'm realizing I have been disconnected from is my instinct,
Mm.
my primal instinct, my body, in other words, the
Yeah.
function of the body, the more animalistic aspect of us, that, you know, the gut brain, if you like, that is your instinct, that does keep
Mm.
you safe, that allows you to discern, you know, in the environmental space around you, you know, if you're safe or if you're unsafe. And I realised that I'd been very largely disconnected from that, you know, and I think we're disconnected from it for a lot of reasons, you know, number one, because of all of our traumas and things that we
Mm.
carry. Um, But I also feel that we just naturally become a little bit disconnected from it because we're disconnected from the rawness sometimes of life.
Mm.
You know, we wrap ourselves up in little kind of cocoons,
Cotton wool, isn't it? Yeah, it's the familiarity of every
daisy
day that we
cocoons.
see. We it just becomes our safe cocoon. It's only when we step out of that into this completely unfamiliar territory that it's like, and yeah. I mean,
So it's
I mean, it's harder on our nervous system. I think doing that on a daily basis with that unfamiliarity, I think would take toll on your body eventually. But I think, yeah, having that first kind of culture shock is, it's always such a biggie. It is always such a biggie.
absolutely, and you're in constant awareness because of
Mm,
it, because you
mm,
won't let your guard down,
yeah,
really, because you almost feel like, well, I can't let my guard down because I need this awareness to keep me safe. And
mm,
but then, as I said, it's been 3.5 weeks now, I guess, and just slowly coming into more comfort. So I did have
yeah,
a bit of a turnaround point where I just kind of had a realization that the biggest majority of people here, even though they're very, very different, they're actually innately nice, friendly, happy, peaceful people.
yeah.
And so with that realization, it was quite funny because reality creation again. The day before that, when I was still in a state of fear, everywhere I went, everybody looked suspicious to me. You know? And then when I dropped into that realization, like as soon as I left the gates of the place where I was staying, I was just surrounded by all these people that looked really happy and friendly. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh wow, and so that was like a turning point of me going, right, we need to just get the nervous system sorted out now, but we also need to know that the nervous system really does serve a purpose for us.
Mm,
That
yeah.
it's reprogramming it to work in the way that it should work,
Yeah.
and not just jumping about, firing off all over the place because we have so much backup of trauma
Yeah.
held within our system, you know.
Exactly. Because it's funny, isn't it? Especially in a different country, there's kind of two ways. I had a similar experience to you when I was in my early 20s and I was sent out to China, like the middle of nowhere China. It was like the equivalent of Bradford. It wasn't like Hong Kong or anywhere particularly westernized. It was like going into the equivalent of Bradford. Most of the population there had never ever seen a white Western person ever. And I love the fact that they called us Dacion because we all have big noses. They do have rather small noses, so yeah, they call us Big Nose, which I thought was quite funny. But it was like a dream because you can't understand the language, so you're just floating around, not really having any awareness of what's happening around you. They could be having an argument or not, because again, it's tonal with Mandarin, so you don't really know if someone's having an argument or not. When you're not used to hearing the language and you don't understand the language. So it's like there's two ways that it could go. You can either go into complete panic of, I don't understand what's going on around me. This place is so unfamiliar. I remember being stared at on the plane on the way out there, like I was a statue. I was standing up on the plane waiting for the toilet going from Hong Kong to Fuzhou. Fuzhou was where I was based. And a guy came up behind me and came round the front of me like this far from my face, and looked me up and down, and like I was a statue, like like when you really walk up to something and really have a good look up and down. And I hadn't had
Yes,
that
you are.
before. Yeah, and I'm like, whoa, I'm a living being. Like, whoa, personal space, man. Jeez, and I'd been warned that I would have that all the time, and I did have that all the time. But it's so the initial thing was that fear of that. And then after that, I was just kind of wandering around in a little dream world because I didn't really understand what was going on around me, but I felt safe, which was good. But it kind of took some time for my nervous system to adjust from being stared at all the time to the point that when I came back to England only 6 months later, I actually had a culture shock the opposite way round because I stood in the supermarket wondering why no one was staring at me. What's wrong with me? Why is no one staring at me? Why am I not getting this attention anymore? It's like I got used to it after 6 months and I came back thinking the opposite. It was so weird what you get used to, something that made me so uncomfortable. I then just got really used to, and then wondered why no one was staring at me anymore in Tesco in Bristol, you know.
Yeah, it does. It takes time to get used to it. And, I guess I didn't, I didn't realize how much time it would take actually
Mm,
to just settle. And I didn't even realize how I would feel actually in the reality of being in, something that was just so different to, my little safe haven of Cornwall, my little bubble that I've been existing in for so many years now. But I feel it's really good for us
mm,
to step out of those comfort zones. And there is a lot of learning and so many
yeah,
layers of realization um, in culture, for example, which
yeah,
kind of automatically shatters a lot of beliefs because we take things for granted,
yeah.
like this is just the way something is. But like where the example that I gave before, when you realize that when you meet someone that's native to Africa, every single thing about their reality is completely different. And therefore, a lot of the beliefs we hold, they are just not even part of their existence. They're
Yeah.
not a thing. I was having a really, really interesting conversation the other day with a young Maasai warrior. There's lots of Maasai warriors. They walk about. They're from Kenya. Full, warrior gear. They've got like they all wear the full gear and they walk up and down the beaches. And of course, they try to sell to you. But they're all very friendly and they all like to have a chat with you as well. And this young 21-year-old, so bright, like literally source was just beaming out of every pore
Mm,
of his being. And they get married young here because it's something that's really important to them. And they also have multiple wives. And the more wives you have is kind of it's to do with status,
mm,
how successful you are or how well you're doing in life. So they judge their own value on things like how many wives they have. But it's just the outlook on everything's so different. So I asked this
mm.
young guy, did he have a wife? And 21 to not have a wife is actually quite old. He, uh, he,
Okay.
he
Wow.
said no, he didn't have a wife because he didn't have enough cows to have a wife.
So,
So it's based on how many cows you have to whether
right.
you can have a wife or not, to whether
Wow.
you are financially in a position to support a wife. So you
Yeah.
need 15 cows.
Wow.
And it's just so fascinating. And it's
Yeah.
like, wow, so
Yeah.
far
So
removed from
different.
where we come from.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's just an example, but there's a lot to learn. There's a humbleness that comes from being here, because it's back to basics. Everything
Yeah.
really basic, and it's back to basics. There's no real luxuries. You have to do without. Things take a long time. Um, there's nothing's convenient.
Yeah.
We don't even have what we know as supermarkets here yet. Yeah, they have shops that sell the odd, you know, if you travel a bit, you can find what we would recognize as a shop,
Yeah.
but it's not the same. You can get so many things there, but you have to move around just to get what we walk into one shop, a convenience store, and buy everything we need for the week. So everything. I'm having to cook from absolute 100% pure ingredient. You can't even get a stock cube, so
Wow.
it's everything is a learning here.
Yeah. And do you feel like there's a lesson or a learning? I mean, you've mentioned some already about why you think you are in Africa at the moment, and is there a way that that relates to your kind of personal growth and what everything you're experiencing at the moment?
I think what I've already said, so number one, and again, this is, how things can shift and change and more things can come to light. But at the moment, the two main things that I'm aware of are number one, a deeper embodiment. So
Mm.
moving through those deeper layers of coming into the body and remembering the body as
Yeah.
the instinct in the gut, and remembering, that more tribal, more grounded aspect of us, kind of really coming into that. And with that, the heightened awareness that comes with being more in your body, and
Yeah.
having to be more aware because you have to be aware
Yeah.
and aware. So that's massive for me at the moment. But also, like I said, getting to play with reality because it's
Yeah.
reality is different, and it's really, really easy to measure what's working and what's not when I'm creating my quantum spaces so that I can deeper embody and understand that form of creation, if you like, as well.
And I love that because sometimes when you talk about quantum, we're talking about, super consciousness, higher self, soul self, what people want to call it. So we think about all of that going up, all that energy going up. It's something like it's something outside of ourselves, whereas actually not. It's our core essence. It's us. And like you was talking about getting into your body, and it's really important to feel that and to feel your gut instinct rather than kind of sometimes people think it's this whole being out of the body experience, whereas actually sometimes it's coming into the body and literally embodying, excuse the pun, but embodying that experience. So how can people connect to Zero Point for guidance and to gain insight and still, and bring that in and embody it into their body, so that it's a grounded experience. It's not, something outside of yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, so over the next couple of weeks on the Love Consciousness, I'm going to be holding a free challenge where I'm going to be guiding individuals through a process of deepening their connection to their higher self or their super consciousness for clarity of their life purpose and, everything else that comes with that. So, anyone that might be listening to this, kind of just stay tuned into the Love Consciousness page and that will come up soon. Um,
Brilliant.
Reaching out, you can reach out and contact me, and I can point you in the direction of a facilitator if you want to kind of be facilitated to be guided through that process. Um, and of course, if you wanted to actually become a facilitator yourself, that's something that you can reach out and you can speak to me about. And yeah, so that I guess that's your options for really diving into the actual Activate Superconscious method. But as I said, there's more than one pathway. There's more than one route. This is something that is innately available to everyone. We've
And if
just
somebody was interested, what would you suggest? Would you suggest that they obviously to pop into your session that you just mentioned first to get a taste of it, get an idea of it, if it's something that they haven't done before, um, and then maybe to be facilitated through it, and
I
would
mean,
that
there's
be?
no,
Would you say that would be with a facilitator, or is there like a kind of smaller course before the teacher training to get them used to that? How does it work, and how long is the teacher training as well?
yeah, I mean, I say that the free challenge that I'm going to set up is going to be a good starting point, and that's why I'm going to set it up
Yeah.
because I feel like what I'm offering in the way of the facilitation training
Mm,
is because people really don't understand exactly what it is. It's difficult to commit to a
mm,
training course without knowing exactly what you're getting yourself into.
mm,
So yeah, so there's that option. There's also a workshop option of going into the just exploring the quantum spaces. That's another way. That's just a 3-hour workshop. So that's just a taster, I guess, of some of this stuff and what we're all about.
brilliant.
Absolutely find a facilitator and experience a session for yourself. It's just a private
Yeah.
one session. And that way you actually get to experience it, which helps you truly really understand what it's about rather than it just being an intellectual understanding, as I mentioned.
Yeah, so
Um,
much more personal, isn't it?
yeah, and of course, if anyone does want any more information about the facilitation, just to reach out. I'm
Yeah.
always available on a chat. So yeah.
And how long is the teacher training?
The training is, well, there is 10 sections to it, which can be done over a number of weeks. Or if you want to just go at your own pace, you can do it over up to 18 months. So
Amazing.
in other words, you can fast track yourself. I'd say over about 12 weeks if you want to get through it quite quickly and get your certification and start to hold space for clients. Or if you have, other commitments and you just want to, take it at your own pace, you can take a bit longer to move through it.
And how does that work as well? Is there any kind of hours that people have to put in, or is there like any kind of weekend residentials, or is it everything purely online? I'm just asking this as a viewer, by the way.
Yeah,
I know the answers to some of this,
yeah,
but
yeah. Everything's online, so it's
yeah,
self-paced. So you can dip in and out to the lessons at your own pace in your own time. However, I do put on, and these are different times each month. I do put on 2 live interactive sessions. So basically holding space on Zoom Live for individuals to either practice with each other, because practice
mm,
is really important.
yeah,
So pairing up and practicing, giving each other the sessions, moving through the process, and also holding group sessions online. So again,
yeah.
the opportunity to dip in. These live sessions are included in the course, so you just drop in and out of them. Yeah,
So you don't
and
have to do so many, or can you just drop in and out as you want over 18 months, or
you can just drop in and out. I do recommend that you drop into about 4.
yeah.
Okay, but it's not compulsory, it's just a recommendation.
And once you've got your qualification, can you still pop into those workshop spaces? And if so, how long for?
So from the day that you register, you can pop into those spaces for free for up to 18 months.
Brilliant. Brilliant. That's fantastic. Thank you. And tell me a little bit more before we finish up about, because this is something that I'm really exploring a lot of at the moment that I'm particularly loving about the quantum space is bringing in divine technologies, which I know is your favorite thing to talk about, and also personal gifts, tapping into the Akashic records and kind of downloading any gifts that we may have had from past lives that would serve us in this life that are, best for our highest purpose. So talk a little bit more about that because I think that's like the secret sauce in all of this.
Okay, I mean, I guess what I'm discovering, and I say discovering because again, it's still unfolding, I'm discovering that we each hold kind of, again, it's like that catalogue, we each hold a catalogue of available gifts,
Mm.
if you like, that won't be the same for each individualized person, if you like. And these gifts can range from anything. It might be, for example, like if there's, individuals watching this now and they are naturally empathic or naturally very sensitive to energy, that might be classed as a gift.
Mm.
There may be other what we class as kind of simple things like the embodiment of unconditional love, to be able to walk out into the world and actually embody unconditional love for humanity, for example, that might be classed as a gift. But most of the gifts of what we seem to be tapping into when we're exploring in these sessions are creational technologies. So it makes sense if we're in creation and we're here to master how we're creating and collectively join together to hopefully create something, better for everyone. There's more kind of service to all rather than service to self. A lot of the gifts that individuals are activating are creational gifts
Mm.
with very specific purposes, like a specific part of creation, if you like. So the first creational gift that I was granted or that I became aware of, I was shown that I had something built into my heart. And I don't know what the name of it is as such. I just called it Bywave to Triwave.
Mm.
And so it was, and I saw it fully, like the kind of what it looked like, if you like. And what it did is I can select an area. So I can just use my focus to think about an area So I might just think about my field of energy, or I might think about an area I'm about to enter into,
Mm.
or something. And I can generate this technology. And what it does is it pulls out all of the distorted, polarized energy and realigns everything back
Yeah.
into its more organic, divine form.
Yeah.
And so again, if you don't even understand that we're kind of like residing in two different types of energy, that is going to mean nothing to you.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of, my way of seeing it and feeling it is we will be granted activation, or we will just become aware of what we hold as our understanding grows.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I guess like that, if you don't understand what biwave or triwave is, like you wouldn't even use it because you wouldn't even know, like, what would even be the point? You wouldn't know. And so there's a lot of gifts like this that individuals are understanding and embodying what it is so that they know how to utilize the creational gift that they've been granted or that they have now have access to, you
And that's
know.
limitless, isn't it? It's like when we were talking the other day about trauma and those layers of trauma that, when we have when we start to work on, for example, our traumatic experiences and we start to release things, and then we get to a point where we think, oh, I've released all that now, it's gone because I feel so much better. And then say, 6 months or a few years down the line, there might be a trigger that comes up and then they have to go through that again. You think, oh, but I've already worked on that, and it becomes really frustrating. But it's actually because there's only so much that the body can take, and there's only so much of in our evolution of soul growth in this particular lifetime that we are ready for. And so we take that bit on, we feel better, we think, oh, we've healed it now. But that's kind of maybe a bit of our ego getting in there and going, yeah, we've done it. And then, a year later, it's like, why am I seeing that again? And it's so frustrating. Is the healing working? And it's like, yeah, it is. But it's because our souls are evolving so much. It's like, oh, it's still there, but you can have, a little bit more now. And I think it's the same with the divine technologies and the divine gifts that we come in as well. You can take some right now, and then you can, as we evolve, we can begin to take in more and more. It's like you can't have all of your meals at once in your whole lifetime. You're going to have a meal a day because it'd be impossible to overeat and take in that amount of food. And I think it's very much the same with these technologies and energy. There's only so much you can take in, but as we evolve more and more, and as we embody more and more of these technologies and begin to understand them, that we can evolve ourselves. But it's always ongoing. It's not just a process where it's like, oh, that's done now, I don't have any more things to download. It's a conscious thing that would just keep going and going.
I don't even have any idea anymore where we're going.
Yeah.
I don't really have any idea where we're going, what we can bring in, what we can create, or what we can access, because it's just opening up more and more and more to things
Mm,
that a previous version of us, a past version of us would have thought it was like some kind of sci-fi movie.
yeah.
And so that's where the trust thing begins to come in as well, because it's like for a lot of people out there, they just won't believe yet that this is actually what we're tapping into.
Yeah.
And there would have been one point in time that I was that person too.
Same.
I
Yeah.
just wouldn't have believed. I would have just been like, that's too far-fetched.
Yeah.
No, and so this is again, it's just an unfolding, and each individual will move through that unfolding at a pace that's just right for them,
Yeah.
hopefully. And
Yeah.
it won't be too intense. Because if it gets too intense, if too many things change too fast, it can create a feeling of cognitive dissonance, a feeling like you're losing
Mm,
your shit.
yeah.
You're going a bit nuts, and it
Yeah.
just feels totally overwhelming. Uh,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, it's just understanding this. That's why we have to go through it like progressively rather than just jump ahead.
Exactly. And this is why I feel the quantum spaces are so important as well, because we can put those intentions and those rules, if you wanted to go back to the rules again, but those kind of rules that we can put in our quantum spaces, where we are also informing that we are only downloading only that energy that our body, not only that serves our highest self and our highest purpose, but also what our bodies can take as well, so that it's a very safe process. It's not like someone's going to get bombarded with all this stuff and feel overwhelmed, that those rules are put in. So I was just letting our viewers know that it's a very
Oh,
safe process.
absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's what I like about this particular process, because you, the information is coming straight from the higher self, not from
Mm.
the ego. The ego thinks it's
Yeah.
ready for things before it is,
Yeah, yeah,
whereas the
yeah.
higher consciousness knows when it's ready for things. So if the ego's like, I want to change this, that I want to shift that, but not truly understanding everything that they're going to have to move through in
Mm.
order to make that shift, the higher consciousness will just be like, no,
Yeah,
not ready yet.
yeah.
No, and that is, and I've been there myself. My ego getting carried away with me when I'm like
Same.
stamping my
Yeah.
feet, like as though like that's really, really conscious, isn't it? Stamping your feet and saying, I want this now.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of laughable actually, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
But
We've all
the
done
whole,
it. I've certainly done it. I'm like, yeah, I'm ready.
yeah,
Give it me all. Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
higher
And then it's
consciousness
like,
is
oh,
like,
wow,
yeah.
really? Like, yeah.
And I'm sure you've experienced it too. There has been a few
Yeah.
times where I've literally asked for a massive leap and then had to go through something that was so intense that I felt like
Mm.
getting on my hands and knees and going, can I change my mind and just,
Yeah.
can we just stop this now?
Yeah.
So I feel that it's always good, and it is part of the process. It's always guided
Mm.
by the highest self,
Yeah.
not the personality,
Yeah.
and therefore it will move at a pace that is
Yeah.
just, you know.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Amazing. Thank you so much, Donna. This has been so good. Can you just let our viewers know where to find you?
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I'll put a link tree, a link underneath in the comments, and that way you can just find all of my stuff in one place to make it easy.
Brilliant. Thank you. I'll put it all in the show notes as well on my podcast. And thank you so, so much again for this amazing conversation. I know we love having these conversations so much. So I think it might even end up being maybe a bit of a monthly thing. So to all of you out
Absolutely.
there, please tune back in again. There'll be much more where this comes from. So it's not the end, it's just the beginning.
Okay,
Thank you
thank
so
you. Thanks
much.
guys for watching. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.